everybody. Welcome to this online public discussion that takes place within the framework of the European Forum 2020, which is a big event of leftist, green and progressive forces that this year takes place online during the whole of November. This seminar, it's more like a discussion, is organized by Transform, but also the Dialogue Project. The title is Christian and Marxist Dialogue on Achieving Ecological Ecumenism. And we have four speakers, Walter Bayer and Cornelia Hildebrand on the side of Transform Europe. Walter Bayer used to be for years the political coordinator of the network. Now he's a member of the board of Transform. And Cornelia Hildebrand is one of the co-presidents of our network, and she comes from the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation. I have also to introduce Federico Rovere. Hello, Federico. He is currently doing his PhD in educational studies at the University of Padua in Italy. And he also works as an invited lecturer at the Sofia University Institute. Hello, Federico. And Raul. Hello, Raul. He's also doing his PhD in philosophy at the University of Florence. And he is also an assistant professor in the Department of Theology, Philosophy and Human Sciences at Sofia University Institute as well. Just a few words on the topic, and of course I'm immediately giving the floor to our speakers. I come from Greece, so not from a Catholic background, but from an Orthodox one. And I can say that both churches, the Catholic and the Orthodox, seem to agree on the high significance of the humankind to tackle the climate crisis. For the Catholics, the 2015 encyclical letter of Pope Francis, Laudato Si, is an important stage on the tradition of the Catholic Church in the relation with critical social issues. On the other hand, for the Orthodox, the Ecumenical Patriarchate decided back in 1989 to declare the 1st of September as the day for the protection of the natural world and the creation. And this was kind of a critical step for the Orthodox Church towards what they call an ecumenic and ecological re-evangelization. In parallel, another important document of the Holy and Great Council of the Orthodox Church back in 2016 talks about the human illusion of the supremacy and the dominance over the natural environment. Apart from these that are quite specific and it can be found within documents, we shall all be aware that the concepts of theological ecology and or ecological theology, but also of the fact that within the very body of the heritage of the liberation theology, there is a special chapter on ecological questions and concerns, such as the contribution of the great eco-theologist Leonardo Boff. But now I have to give the floor to my colleague Walter, who will say a few words upon the very concept of the dialogue project, this transversal dialogue between Christians and Marxists. Dear Walter, please.
Hello, thank you, Angelina. First of all, I want to express my gratitude to both the hosts of the European Forum of the Left, of the Progressive Forces, and to our Christian friends who are available to participate in this event. It's worth to mention that it's maybe the very first time in history that the left opens itself to a dialogue to the Christian public in one of its, so to say, central and important international events. And at the same time, it's historical that Christians opted to participate in such an event. And although we know that it is a little step, at the same time, it has its historic significance, and I am really thinking that it's worth to emphasize and showcase this fact. Second, I did not choose the title of this discussion, but I must confess that ecumeny is one of my favorite words. Maybe Connie and Angelina know that I use this notion to describe the necessity to enter into a dialogue, a relation among the different, as I used to say, churches of the left. I believe that dialogue within the left and of the left with the intellectual and philosophical and cultural environment is not only precondition for cognition. You cannot understand the world properly if you are not willing to enter in a dialogue with the people around you, far and close around you. And at the same time, it's a precondition for agency, meaning for changing the world. And that's it, what the whole discussion of today is about, changing the world. It's not a philosophical, nor a theological, nor a cultural exercise. It's a conversation about how we can jointly cope with the dramatic crisis which humanity has entered, paradoxically, due to its richness and due to the plentiness of its possibilities. And that is a very serious matter. We are now in a stage in which we are threatened to destroy the world, and within the world, our civilization. And my last word in this context of introducing our debate would be that the election of Pope Francis and the sequence of his encyclical letters, and in particular Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti, the recent one. By the way, Peter Steinmeier-Pösel, a theologian who cooperates within our dialogue project, has counted 41 times the word dialogue in the encyclical letter Fratelli Tutti. That is a world historical change, that from the top of the Catholic Church, the needs of humanity to transform the productive basis and the consumer, the mode of consumption of our society societies is addressed in this direct way. And I think the left is well advised to use this window of opportunity to arrive at a ecumeny, not only among itself, but also to an ecumeny with all good willing forces in the world, not only to talk, but to act jointly.
Thank you very much, dear Walter. So Federico, Raul, who wants to take the floor and respond? I would like also an overview from you, from your side, on how you see this project.
Well, I think we can both say something about this.
Yeah, sure, Raul.
Thank you very much, Angelina, and also Walter and Connie. Yeah, I really find myself in what Walter said. Well, we were firstly invited to participate in this project, and we have been participating for 3 years or so now. And what I learned, and especially from the left parties and the leftists, let's say, is that when you can build and you can, you can find yourself doing a real experience of dialogue, you can feel free. No, so mainly it's first of all, it's let's say it's a personal experience of feeling free. And secondly, it's a path. I think it's not only a choice, but it's the only path towards transformation and towards social justice nowadays, because at least as Pope Francis says and stresses it a lot, as we can see from his last encyclical Fratelli Tutti, that it's about fraternity and social friendship, is it's a way of building this political social friendship. And mainly I would say it's a political act, because somehow through dialogue, I mean, the reason for me dialoguing, at least, is that through dialogue we can recognize the richness of the other's tradition. No, so me as a Christian, it's a must to meet other traditions, to learn from other traditions, and not to assimilate the other traditions to mine, but to recognize the difference, to recognize the richness of the tradition itself, and to know that this is a source of critical thought towards me. And that's why I would say I would like to develop later on this idea of dialogue as a political act. But
Federico.
Yes, first of all, thank you, Angelina, thank you, Walter and Connie, and thank you to all the organizers for inviting and having us today. It's really a pleasure to have a public occasion to discuss and to share also the experience of the Dialogue project, which has been, as Raul said, going on for some years now. And I think it already reached some points, actually. I am personally very happy and and also very willing to look where will we go next, actually. And going on with what Walter said from the more leftist side, and I say more leftist side because I always have a doubt about talking so strictly about identities, because also into this path of dialogue we are going to, I always have the feeling that these identities are not as strong and stable and differentiated as we think. So many times I have found myself discussing with someone who was supposed to be from a different side, and then we found ourselves with so many similarities and other kind of differences that we didn't expect before. So it's also an experience of negotiating the identities and of finding different points of convergence and of differences. And this is always very interesting, actually. And I'd say that this is also something something new, something in a sense groundbreaking for Catholic movements, that that there's a possibility to develop a dialogue with the leftist socialist tradition, and especially it's groundbreaking in this time where we can dialogue, sharing a common concern. And this is one of the most important things in this project for me, that we meet and we can meet because we share some concerns. And the differences in the two traditions involved are not are less important than the concerns that we share and the path we want to go through together. So I can leave the floor to Connie, I guess.
Yes, yes, actually, I would like to listen to Connie, how she reacts on, yeah, Federico said that these identities seem more solid as they actually are, and that we share more common ground as it seems. And also, Raul mentioned very clear the need for social transformation. So, Connie.
Yeah, the first point is not so easy. Also for me, is it easy because I'm not a non-religious people. I'm a socialist or communist, and I work with the tools of Marxism. But I work a lot of time together with people. They have their self-understanding as Marxist Christian or Christian Marxist people, and I work with them together a long of time. And in this discussion, I understood that the differences between to be a Marxist and to be a Christian is not a problem. It's easy to bring it together. But it's a question if you believe in God or not. But this difference is not a problem for political dialogue. That is my dialogue is another question, also a democratic question. I want to make 3 comments to this question. At first, I see that our society today is increasingly plural, social, political, ideological, and it seems for me really important to defend the open democratic character of our societies, with no enmity between the people, as you can see as in the USA, the diversity in enmity, but a diversity in solidarity, not as a slash of culture, but the creation of a world in which many worlds have their place, this character of the inclusive society. Also to build under the conditions of the secular world with the diversity of believing, of thinking, of ideologies, to create a common world as the inclusive world for everybody, for women and men, for migrants and the people around the world. That how we can do it more precisely, that is my question. In which democratic way we can translate it, our kind of diversity. And the second problem I will touch is the radical left has the goal to change the world radical, fundamentally. But if you want to change the world, then we have to find majorities, social majorities. And if you see the situation of the political left in Europe, you can see we are not in the majority. We are in the position of defensive. And the question is how we can get off this situation, how we can build a new kind of broad alliances, of a broad possibility and understanding that we have to change the world in the direction of the social ecological transformation. And to build such kind of new alliances, for that is it necessary that we are going in dialogue, that we have dialogue. And dialogue is not, we agree with everything. No, dialogue we have a way for action. That is a big challenge for us, to describe not only the dialogue as a methodology, to describe the dialogue as a way for changing this situation. That is my answer to this question at first. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Okay, since we already start touching these questions, I want you from more to go a bit deeper and discuss about the very motivation of you, why you wanted to start, I mean, why as a Christian you want to have a dialogue with a Marxist, and why as a Marxist, from all the different social, political, cultural groups and identities, you choose to initiate a dialogue with the Christians. If we do actually believe that the Christians is a homogeneous identity, are all the Christians the same? And I would also like to listen from Raul and Federico if you feel more close with any kind of Christian, or maybe with a non-believer who shares also, though with you, a common vision about society, or how about the human interaction, for example. Yes, I want also to listen from all of you what some elements that you actually appreciate to the other, what a Christian can appreciate from a socialist and vice versa, but also what kind of elements you clearly despise, what kind of aspects or a methodology of thinking, or the vision of the world, aspects of the vision of the world, you believe it is unapproachable for your thought and yes, the way you perceive the world. Walter, you would be the first to react.
Of course, when talking about motivation, there is also always a personal motivation and a political motivation. As far as the personal motivation is concerned, I want to tell you that I was raised in a family of which the father was a survivor of Auschwitz, and the mother was a very humble Catholic person. And when they decided to raise a child, they decided to have it raised in a Catholic, belonging to the Catholic Church. The father agreed because he wanted to protect the child from the possibility of being prosecuted as a Jew. And the mother was happy because she was part of the Catholic Church. So for me, religious identity always has been something, I would even say postmodern, the composition of very different parcels in my life and very different components of my thinking, which why I never understood after becoming a socialist and a communist why even the most open-minded comrades whom I knew had such an inimical attitude when it comes to religious questions. And that brought me to one of the basic conclusions of my personal and of my political life. I do not believe in identity. I think if you want to remain yourself, you have to be prepared and you have to enjoy to change yourself. But if you change yourself, then you are somebody different than you have been previously. So if you do not want to be a dogmatic person who defends something which he or she believes as unreducible identity as a core of yourself, but if you want to be open to the world and to the impact which the outer world makes on yourself, you have to be a person who enjoys changing and developing him or herself. And what fascinates me in the people who participate in our dialogue is that they maybe see the world in the same way, namely as a challenge, not something which you have to address with an explanation, but something which you have to understand through questioning and through the readiness to change. And it's remarkable that I follow this, or I'm part of the process of the dialogue now since 20 years. And in these 20 years, many people dropped out of the process. And I think they dropped out of the process because they don't feel comfortable with being continuously challenged. And when you ask me what I particularly like with my Christian friends and comrades, it is, I would say, ethical sincerity, which you are permanently threatened to lose if you deal professionally with politics. Because politics is struggle, and struggle requires cunning, and it makes also a different person out of you. And what I learned with my Catholic friends is that there is, so to say, the possibility, and I believe that the Catholic Church is a very political space, but there's a possibility to be political, meaning to act within an institution while at the same time keep sincerity. Maybe it's the principle of love, which they put forward so prominently. Maybe it's the very special quality of the persons with which we have to do in this context. But this I enjoy very much, and this I learned from them, and I apply also in my political practice. And maybe that is, so to say, a secret, but that's what Christian calls the principle of love, and what I would call, so to say, solidarity and generosity, and the willingness to accept your partner or your competitor or your opponent also as a person is also a recipe of success. You do better politics if you believe in the capacity of people to behave humanly. It's a winning recipe, not in any particular moment, but in the long term, it pays off if you apply this recipe, which why I'm particularly grateful for the way, for the trajectory which we passed during the last 2 decades, and with Raul and Federico in the last 5 years, if I remember rightly.
Thank you, Walter. So Federico or Raul, who wants to react first?
I can Federico. Try to start this time, yes. Even if it's also always very hard to try and say something meaningful after Walter has spoken, but we have to try anyway. So I would also like to say something about personal motivations for this dialogue, because actually when I joined this project almost 4 or 5 years ago, I actually don't remember exactly, it seems to me as something very natural on a personal level. Of course, because I've always been involved almost all my life from high school with leftist students groups and social centers and different political experiences. On the other side, in Christian groups. So for me, it was really something, the dialogue between Christian spirituality and a Marxist approach to politics, it was also something that was already part of my experience. So it was nothing really new or strange, I would say. So for me, it was really, I remember the feeling of finding something that I really thought, well, this is what should be done. Okay. Because it's something that for me, it was natural. Actually, I also remember pretty clearly that when I started actually discovering a bit more about the gospel and Christianity with my family, because I come from a Christian family, and with my father, we discussed a bit something about the gospel and about love and about the love for the poor, especially. And I remember very well thinking with myself, okay, that's basically what leftist politicians try to do. So I don't know, I've always had this feeling that Christian values and leftist and Marxist values have really a big common ground. And the thing I think that I like the most about this dialogue and about all the leftist friends we are dialogue with, it's I don't know actually how to express it rightly in English. I would say I'm sorry to the interpreters, but it's how you are very skilled in keeping your feet on the ground. And all the attention you give to a very precise social and economical analysis of situations, because it's something that in Christian groups it's very often lacking. There's a high richness in spiritualities and values and morals and personal relationships, but really I'd say that we have a problem with social analysis. And to be aware of what is happening on a broader level, which is not personal and not ethical, I would say, but on the political, economical, and social level, yes, there's a lack. And it's always very interesting to have the occasion to listen to you speaking and analyzing what is happening, actually, what's happening. And I don't know, actually, until now, I have to say, I haven't found really something that for me it's a close point in our dialogue, something I said I really do not like, or I absolutely cannot agree with this. But I think this is also a kind of a quality of our dialogue, so that I don't think there are topics we cannot discuss or we cannot learn from each other something. Maybe we still haven't touched some of the most difficult topics to find an agreement or to find a path to dialogue with. But actually, I am looking forward to it. Actually, I am looking forward for the moment where we will touch something that we will identify as a point on which we cannot agree upon in any possible case. So this is going to be an interesting moment, I guess. And I can leave the floor, I think. I don't know. I wanted to say something else, but now I don't remember it. So maybe it will come again later.
You can, yes. Raul, I do believe that you will find a point where that you despise actually in a socialist.
Well, now first of all, I wanted to say a couple of things about the motivations of this dialogue. Maybe later on I will try to give you an answer, but personally, I mean, I was invited the first time to participate in one of the meetings, and I from the very beginning I felt that I was participating in a let's say a dialogical space that was already built, already going on. So it was like people that came before me had already been dialoguing and deeply, and they were able to create this space where I felt good. I felt at home, and so I was not like at the defensive. No, was not defending my position or scared, whatever. So this helped a lot. And yeah, of course, there are people that was working, especially Franz Kronreis and Walter Weyer. And I mean, as a Christian, then there's a very deep motivation that is linked to the idea of ecumenism that Walter addressed at the beginning of his presentation. And I mean, ecumenism means that, I mean, the inhabited place, our home, our common home, let's say. So it's like the subtitle of Laudato Si encyclical. It's the common home. So it's a ecumenical encyclical. And indeed, he addresses it, or he says that Pope Francis says that he was inspired by the ecumenical patriarch Bartholomeus from Constantinople. No? And so somehow why this? Because it's our common place, our common home. So it's a place where we meet, and we have to deal with the same with the place we share, let's say, that we feel it's our home. So from this perspective, I just follow the teachings of the church too. You know? But yeah, of course, I can say from this hand, I mean, dialoguing. I feel good with Christians, of course. I remember first you, Angelina, asked us if it was the same to, or how did you feel dialoguing with the other Christians, our brothers in faith, I would say, and how was it with non-believers, or yeah, non-religious people. But this time too, I would say that Pope Francis wrote the recent encyclical Fratelli Tutti, and it was addressed to. He said that he was inspired in the Grand Imam from Al-Azhar. I mean, it's not a brother in faith, no? And at the very heart of this encyclical, we can find the parable of the Good Samaritan. It's I don't know if you know, but it's a parable where a Jewish, a Hebrew, helps a foreigner, someone who didn't share his faith, who didn't belong to his land, to his place. So it's the kind that here we can find again this ecumenism, no? And how this is a motivation for me to dialogue, to open myself and to go and find other people that feels things in another way. And last thing about how I approach dialogue and how I think, I mean, which are the methods or the way we perceive the world, the reality, and I would say that at least two things. One is that Pope Francis speaks about that unity prevails over conflict. So I'm not afraid of conflict. We shouldn't be afraid of conflict, and we should recognize the other's identity, the difference, the positive difference of the other. And maybe, as Federico said once, I'm looking forward to go deeply where we don't share things, where our thoughts are different, but I think there we can recognize really the difference of the others, as a difference through, let's say, a differentiated consensus. And maybe, who knows, it's not a matter of changing the other's mind, but it's a matter of understanding a new way of seeing things, of broadening our own visions, and mainly learning from you that's I think one of the leftist tradition richness, this critical thinking, this social analysis of reality, and so I think with this I can answer to Angelina's provocation. Thank you.
Thank you, Raul. Walter, you know, there is a question. Well, it's not. Yes, it is a question from Franz Conrive here in the Q&A box. He's saying, my experience is that at the one side, this dialogue indeed taints me, but on the other side, entering in the mind of my interlocutor, I deepen my Christian roots. I am becoming more Christian. What do you think about this, Walter? He precisely addressing the question to you. Your microphone.
I can confirm from my side that looking through the eyes of Christian friends and comrades helps me to understand better the ethics of communism, and also to develop a critical attitude to ways in which communism has betrayed its own ideals. So it's true that in a dialogue, you help each other also by teaching to look through the eyes of your interlocutor. And there are many experiences of this way. Politics always has to do with compromises, and sometimes your compromises are bad ones in the sense that they remain below the possibilities. And I find that the constant confrontation with the views of people who share a considerable part of your values, but at the same time are not subordinated to the political logic and the power logic, challenge yourself in terms of being more radical. And radicality actually meaning looking at the roots of things and trying to handle the things from the roots on, is that what we attribute to ourselves. And that, let me say this additionally, applies in particular to many of the writings of Pope Francis. I really would advise my socialist comrades, as Michael Löwy said in the previous webinar, to read and to study Laudato Si and its critique towards capitalism, not only as an economic system, also as an economic system, but also as a way of living, involving also ourselves as individuals. And this way of thinking radically also about oneself, and also about oneself's involvement in the injustice of the world and in its self-destructive character, that is something which socialists can learn from Christians, and particularly from the writings of Pope Francis.
Thank you, Walter. I want also to give the floor to Connie, but before that, I want also to comment something. And please, Connie, consider this in your input. Well, my constant inner struggle within this dialogue is this, that, okay, yes, I'm an atheist, also coming from an atheist family. On the one hand, it is the philosophical and anthropological aspect where we can say we share a lot of common elements, both in the human as an individual entity, but also for the society, etc. But on the other hand, here comes the real life, the everyday life, politics, etc. So you meet in an institution that is called church. And an institution, we all know, any kind of institution, tends from its very foundations to prevent radical social transformations. An institution is about preservation and about the reproduction of the current status quo of the establishment. Okay, and we have so many examples for this. You don't have to mention all the times that the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church have been completely conservative and against the very movement of society. Okay, but this is what it is extremely difficult for me to solve. This contradiction. I mean, yes, I can imagine you standing next to me on the ecological question, on the refugee question, etc., on many questions. But I know that on the next corner, you understand, huh? The church will be on the other side completely. So how do you, Connie, at least in your mind, handle this contradiction? Your microphone.
I will start with a personal remark because I had a lot to learn, but not only myself, I self had to learn. My father's mother was a communist. My father's father was a social democrat. It was difficult enough. My mother's father and my mother's mother were Catholics and Sorbs, a national Slavic minority in the GDR time. I grew up as an atheist, and I was a typical child of the GDR. I was in the children organization, I was in the youth organization, and later I was member of the Socialist United Party in the GDR. And I studied philosophy, Marxist, Leninist philosophy. I was influenced by the historical materialism as a scientific worldview of Marxism-Leninism. But I also learned under the leading of the role of Marxism-Leninism, other worldviews and religions were devaluated, and some of them were declared to be dissenters and enemies. For example, and that was important for my own development on this way. In the beginning of the 80s, the Protestantic Economic Church started a consular process for peace, social justice, and preservation of creation. This consular process, it was really important, was also connected with the concrete critique of politics. But the public critique of politics in the socialist state was more or less not allowed. And it was dangerous for the people, for the critical people, for the critical thinking. And what I understood after the collapse of the state socialism was a society that suppressed other worldviews, suppresses religious, cannot be an emancipative society. It is also possible to fight for social world, for social justice, for just transition, as Christian, as Muslim, as Buddhist people, or other believer. And it is a bitter lesson from the state socialism of the GDR that dissenters were declared as the enemies of socialism. And that lesson accompanies me until today. That is a bitter lesson also for my own biography. And so I'm on the way to see, we have to see broader. We have to see in what kind of pluralism we can reach our own knowledge. And Federico, for me, it's funny because if you say you have a lack of social analysis, if I read at first Evangelii Gaudium and then Laudato Si and then Fratelli Tutti, it is a compensation of social analysis. That is a great battle of social analysis, and really precisely. And what we can learn also is such kind of understanding the current problem, the worldwide open questions, and to translate it in the language that everybody is able to understand the problem and the connection between all of them. And that we can learn to speak so that everybody can understand what does it mean to have open question, to have the challenge on the world, and to find, you are looking for solutions for all these problems. What we can learn from the Christians or from the religious people, I think we have maybe also some problems with the social analysis. We have to be more precisely, and what we have to looking for is for concrete strategic project to translate our analysis in concrete strategic projects. That is the challenge for us. And what I think what we have missing or what we can from you is spirituality. To build a community that is not only based on rationality. Of course, we have to be rational, but not all the time. Community that also touch people's feeling. Community that helps to bear pain as in illness and death. Community that gives comfort. In such cases, praying together can be very useful and helpful. Prayer also gives the possibility for inner reflection, maybe also for collective reflection. That would be very useful also for the leftists too. We are leftists. We are born to fight for class struggle, for determine our culture and society full of class struggles. Of course, clear, the society is full of class struggles. At the same time, it makes sense to think with the class struggle, with the class perspective, beyond the class. When it comes to a broad alliance against the climate change, for example, we need to think from the poorest of the society over the poorest of the society. And my feeling is that Pope Francis is really good to address such message to all of us. Of course, dialogue, I told it before, is not only a nice thing. And of course, we know all differences between the radical left, between our own struggling between us. And I know also that the Catholic Church is not a harmonious body of institution. I see a lot of different positions. And if you compare, for example, some position from Pope Benedict and Pope Francis, you can see some differences in the thinking. And the Christian Church unites different viewpoints on many worldly issues. Certainly also diversity of the theological viewpoints, which there are many different opinions. Also about of the role of woman. In the role of woman, that could be really a difficult point, and that is the differences. I know that everything's connected with the divine creation belongs to the core of Christian faith. Nevertheless, for example, the ban on abortion and the tightening on this ban by the Polish government with the support of the Catholic Church in Poland must be reacted from the left wings. And I'm not sure, I haven't heard anything about the Pope to this question. But we can't be silent to this question. The consequences is more stronger for the Catholic Church itself. But I see progress. I see also progress. It's in the paragraph 23 of Fratelli Tutti, that shows me that Pope Francis is thinking about this question. Women and men should have equal dignity and rights. That is good. The question is, what does it mean for the daily life? What does it mean for the woman in the daily life? What dignity,
Obviously.
what kind of rights they have? And that maybe we have to see as one differences between us. Many thanks.
Thank you, Connie. Yes, the example you gave now with the woman's right to a safe and legal abortion is exactly one example of what I was trying to explain before, that what we do then. And I guess that it is also a problem for you, Raul and Federico, how you debate such things within your Christian brothers and sisters, I guess. Because obviously the left needs to fight for it, but the left would fight for it either way. The question is also people within the churches to fight for those rights and to build alternative narratives within the church. Federico, I think that you wanted to react, so I'm giving you the floor.
Yes, I wanted to react on what you said about dealing with the Catholic Church as an institution, but actually, Connie, you have already said part of what I had in my mind, so that I think that it's not that easy to describe the Catholic Church as one institutional body. What you said, Angelina, it's nothing I can deny, actually, that the Catholic Church, as every other institution, actually, it's very much attached to keeping at least some parts of the status quo. This is also the role of an institution, to keep things stable. But actually, the Catholic Church, as every other institution, is not a unique, homogeneous body. Into the Catholic Church, you have very different positions, very different sensibilities, and you also have, how can I say it, an example that came into my mind is all the work that Catholics groups are doing, for example, in the migrant crisis, in parts of Europe where the states are not even considering the problem. In many parts of the peripheries of big cities where there's not institutional help, there's the Catholic Church, actually. So it's not easy to describe the Catholic Church as an institution, because of course it's an institution, but it's also an institution which is lived by very different sensibilities and local situations. So of course it's a question. It's a question. The role of the Catholic Church in keeping the status quo. But it also have to be always considered that there's a hidden movement, which is not on the media most of the times, which is not on the big news, but which is actually in the hands of the Catholic Church many times. And it's way more difficult to answer to your provocation on the question of abortion, of course. I wouldn't say that the question is right now to mobilize Catholics on on the question of the right to safe abortion, because for Catholics, this is a very sensitive question, of course. So even saying that abortion is a right that should be safeguarded, it's not so easy into Christian in Christian thought. Quite the opposite, actually. So I guess that the point of discussion would be on the foundations of this problem. So in which sense, and this is something which would be very useful to develop, a discussion whether what constitutes a right, in which sense abortion should be described as a right in your thoughts and in your feelings, and on the other side also giving the space to listen why in the teachings of in the social teaching of the Catholic Church, abortion is not seen as a right. So I don't think that on this particular topic right now there's a space for calling to a direct action, but for sure there's a space calling for further development of the dialogue and of the study.
Thank you, Federico. I think that we have done a pretty good first circle. Now maybe it's time to move on the very topic of this discussion, which is ecology and how we both can come together to achieve ecological ecumenism. I want to give the floor maybe to Walter now. And yes, focus on this topic now.
Yes, but just allow me one remark to how to address differences. I must say that I'm always a little bit reluctant to address the differences because I want to avoid to embarrass our partners. And I suspect that the embarrassment would be that we jointly find out that we even in the delicate issues, we do not disagree that much as we are supposed to disagree. For example, the role of women in the Catholic Church. I believe that this is really my deepest concern. And I believe that there will be no renovation of the Catholic Church unless it changes the role of women in a revolutionary way. I mean, it's not an issue of gradually developing the possibilities. That is really the necessity of a qualitative leap. And whenever Connie or I address this issue in our discussions, I observe that at least the women in the room start to smile or indicate through their body language that they agree with it. And this is the problem with any dialogue. You dialogue only with your friends, and the people whom you address with your critique do not sit on the table. And that is, for me at least, a certain psychological barrier to speak on things as open as it would be necessary and appropriate. As for abortion, first of all, politically, it is unnegotiable. Christians conclude from the likeness of the person to God that at any stage the human personality is untouchable and sacred. Socialists, feminists having their feet on the ground say the right of every and each woman to have its autonomous decision on their body must be respected. From this perspective, definitely unnegotiable. But at the same time, I would like us to agree on one simple thing, and I think it is possible. Whatever you may think ethically if abortion, it has no place in the penal code of a country. It is not something on which the state has to decide, because that is unjust, that disadvantages the lower classes, this is repressive, and at the end of the day, it's the domination of women, of men over women's body. And I believe that there is space to discuss on this issue, because one thing is ethics and the other thing is the state and the state law. And now I consumed a lot of time of this intervention for hammering out this point. But one word about ecology. I believe that the innovative quality of the stances which Pope Francis takes in the encyclical letters consists in the recognition that the world is in a multiple crisis which cannot be separated one from the other. This is the question of peaceful conviviality of people. This is the question of the ecological alternative to environmental degradation, and this is social inequality. And the inseparability of these three crises leads him to the consequence that it is not only about changing individual behavior, but it's about introducing structural changes, that we live in a society that kills, and this society must be structurally changed towards a society in which human values and ecological solidarity prevails over the maximization of profits. And I think this is so close to the way how socialists interpret the problems of the world in which we are in, that on the one side, we can always deepen this analysis, but I think that we are now in a moment also in our dialogue that we have to transcend the stage in which we interpret the world and start thinking about common ways how to change it. And in my vocabulary, I would say that the dialogue must become more structurally and must become more political.
Thank you, Walter. Connie, would you like to open now the debate regarding the ecological issues? We have 1 hour left.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking in this moment, what does it mean, more structural and more political to think this? So in this moment, I thought the words of Walter. And for me was interesting to see in two social encyclicals that they are social analyses in the best sense about the most important problems of the time. More or less an interpretation of the sign of the time for action. And this is about an analysis about the character of the economy, about the destruction of natural resources, about an economy that kills. And this analysis seems me very Marxist. And Marx also analyzed the society by focusing on the basic structure, the economy. But Pope Francis, and that also spoke Walter before, he also links his analysis to the concrete suffering of the individuals. And especially the option for the poorest reminds very much of the liberation theology. And he describes also, and that was for me really important, also the responsibility of the elites, of the ruling class, we would say. And he has no illusion. And that was also in the speech and the language of Laudato Si and also Fratelli Tutti. Fratelli Tutti is full experiences and disillusionments. And the look of the unsolved problems in the world, the disillusionments in the face of continuing the financial speculation after the crisis of 2008, 2009, he described it also in Laudato Si, the continuation of slave labor of workers in the face of organ and human trafficking. And he sees the destruction of the environment, nature, natural resources, of the human life, even 5 years after Laudato Si. In the view of this continuing development, Pope Francis cannot describe the alternative as an illusion, it's clear. But he described it, and that is good for me. This language is really important. He described it as a finally call to act. And I was looking for how many times the word politics or politicians is known, more than 60. Therefore, the social encyclical is addressed to all people, regardless of the religion or non-religion people, but it is a special way addressed to those who have political responsibility. And this dimension was also presented in Laudato Si, but is stronger emphasized in Fratelli Tutti. Also, not only to describe the destruction of or destroying of the ecology and of the environmental resources of the human life. It is a destruction, it's a consequences of this analysis to address the political class, to address his message, especially to the political class, because we have to rethink, we have to rebuild the politics. And this message is going stronger. It's a kind, is not it's a kind of declaration of missing of politics in this moment. And for me, it was really interesting to see in which way he analyzed all these different problems. And I see a lot of great proximity of discourses between the left-wing discourses and the discourses in Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti. More or less, also Petra Steinmeier-Pösel described in her contribution in the last webinar, that both Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti are twin documents. Laudato Si is more or less the analysis of the situation, and Fratelli Tutti is the call to act, to build a broad coalition for act. And for me, it was an interesting moment that he described, and that is maybe to understand better understandable if you have a Christian background. The love, the political love and the social friendship as a path to alternative. It is a task of love to break the dynamic in direction of indifferences, of ignorance and contempt for the oppressed, abandoned, and invisible people, especially also the migrants. And Pope Francis spoke a lot of times about the situation, difficult situation of migrants. And Marx had also this people in his mind when he set the categorical imperative at the end of criticism of religion. He demanded to overthrow all relations in which a man is debased, enslaved, abandoned, and despicable essence. And also interesting is for me that the understanding of human, it is not the explanation only the individual human. No, the man cannot exist alone. It always needs the others. Only in the community can problems be solved. Therefore, the focus of all actions must be the community. And this means social action, but also the economy. The economy must be an economy for life. The economy for life. This term is also an ecumenic term for the ecumenic between the Christian churches, but also between the Christian churches and the other religions, and also for the non-religious people, also includes the left. The question of what we would describe, or we would describe this question as a social ecological transformation. And both is similar. The description, we have to change the world order, and that is new. To change the world order, it is more or less the same words as people with a left-wing background formulated. We have to change the world order. That means not only the economy, that means also the question for the migrants, the question of living standards, the question of consumption. It's a big question in Laudato Si, and also a question in Fratelli Tutti. And this is also the question of our life. We have seen in the Corona crisis in which way we can reduce. It's possible to reduce our living style. But the question is in which way we can do it, that everybody have the access to the basic incomes, to the basic goods. And the basic goods is health at first, especially under the condition of the Corona crisis. It's a question of food, of clean water, of education, of culture, of housing. All this bring together in the question of commons, and the question of commons as a common strategy for an alternative. That, I think, it's a good point to think deeper in the dialogue between Christian and Marxist and socialist people. Yeah, that is my first comment to this question. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. Raoul, what would be your reaction? And actually, can we indeed build a common struggle, the Christians and the Marxists, regarding climate crisis? Do you think that since we need to connect and relate the climate crisis with the mode of production, and we need to speak the truth, actually, do you see Christians to speak the truth regarding the current capitalist system?
Well, I think Pope Francis answers all the things in Laudato Si. He's very clear, and he uses more or less the same words. So I shouldn't add anything to these teachings. I mean, it would be useless to repeat the same things. So the point is that, as also Walter stressed before, that an economy centered in maximization of profit leaves the person behind, no? And how to? I mean, this is capitalism, and is this and this production means of production, the way, I mean, the system works, and means of productions and the wealth in hands of a few people, mainly in the north part of the world, and there are things very, very well explained by Pope Francis, and this is what generates poverty. And of course, the ecological crisis is it's a social crisis. This should be said. And also maybe that a spiritual reflection about this should be added. I mean, when I don't want to come back to the things that maybe sometimes things we do not agree with, and we sometimes don't want to touch the things. But as Federico said, maybe about women's roles and maybe about abortion and so on. Yes, Walter, you put it in a way that, I mean, it's urgent, it's not negotiable, etc. Maybe, of course, that's I can't comment such a thing, of course, but as Federico said, we need a common ground, maybe to reflect in a common ground. We need to build a path. We need to get to know deeply the reasons of the others. It's not just about saying what we always say. I mean that why I am for this for women's rights to abortion, or I'm against. But I think Pope Francis indicates a good path that is, I mean, getting close to people, thinking about the sufferings of the people. I mean, it's not an answer, but the fact is this, that this common ground, that's the point where I think we should go towards. Maybe can be think also as a spiritual ground. And Pope Francis says in Laudato Si' too, the cry of the earth is the cry of the poor. So that's why the ecological crisis is a social crisis, because he said before in Evangelii Gaudium, that's an apostolical exhortation from Pope Francis, that genuine Christian, let's say, the genuine lifestyle of the gospel is starting from the poor. I mean, choosing the poor, making this preferential option for the poor. So when Connie said before that society that suppress religions is not an emancipated society, let's say, so it's a very political issue, she stressed. Maybe this is one example of how the richness of the other can offer you a new way of understanding things. So religions may offer a spiritual background, a spiritual ground from which find new ways of understanding, new ways of dialogue. And I wanted to react to a last thing, and it's of course we are of course younger, and we many times in our dialogue sessions asked to do concrete things, to translate this all this knowledge, all this experience in concrete acts. But yeah, Pope Francis too says very clear, for example, in Laudato Si', that we should change to new to renewable energy or things like that. But I think by dialoguing and that by making public sometimes our dialogue, by showing that we can be open to the other, we can make space, make room for the other in ourselves, and for the other, I mean, for the other that is different from me, that has sometimes radical different thoughts, and so maybe it hurts, but going this deep, I think it's a very political and concrete act, because if capitalism is this economical system, if this throwaway culture where we are living in leads us to indifference, leads us to an identitary thought where there's no room for difference, so differences are cancelled, by dialoguing and by making sometimes public this dialogue, or maybe small concrete actions like small webinars or whatever, but who knows, maybe maybe, I don't know, working with other concrete projects, but by testifying, let's say, this experience we are doing, it's a very strong way of and political way to respond to this culture of throwaway, to this indifference, to this I don't know. So that's it.
Thank you, Raul. And Federico, I want to listen also some comments from you.
Actually, I have very few things to add to what has been already said, which was very, very rich and thought-provoking. And one very little thing that came into my mind when I was listening to you is that I was very, very struck when reading, especially Fratelli Tutti, that at the end of that encyclical, Pope Francis writes very clearly and very directly that the message of building a new social friendship and the form of political love is directed to everybody. That was for me very, very interesting, that a Pope decides to write into a message which normally it's directed to Christians, right? Specifically, this message is for everyone. And he also very directly says, for Christians, the roots of this need for building social friendship is in the Bible and in the gospel and in the teaching of the church, while everybody have other sources to root this intention. But the message is the very same for everyone. So this is a very clear statement that building social friendship is a need for everyone. It's something we as a society should build, and we have to build that sorry for the pun, but actually I also had the feeling from reading that encyclical that one of the core questions is exactly to rebuild the kind of we that is able to tackle the question he have addressed in Laudato Si. So in a sense, there's a set of problems, but it's not yet ready the kind of collective subjectivity that can address those problems. And actually, this is kind of fun, but in just some days before reading Fratelli Tutti, I was rereading Mark Fisher's Capitalist Realism. And Mark Fisher uses a phrase which is surprisingly almost the same as a phrase used by Pope Francis, which is we are facing challenges, but we still do not have the collective subjectivities able to face those challenges. So for me, that was a clear sign that the path is already traced. So we know the problems and we have to mobilize together in order to face them. And I also agree very much with what Raul have said, that dialogue, and in particular this dialogue, is already a political act. This is not an excuse to not doing something more, of course, but I think it's also very very important to recognize that that dialoguing and bringing together thoughts and needs, it's already a step towards the building of social friendship. Actually, it's the first step towards the building of social friendship.
Thank you, Federico. Walter, would you like to take the floor, or we can ask from the audience to post questions? We have half an hour now, and we can have a discussion with the audience. Your microphone.
I prefer the Q&A moment to have the questions from the audience.
Okay. I have various questions / comments from Franz Kronreif. I actually want to ask him if he wants to give him video and audio so he can pose more lively the question. Just let me know if you agree. Okay, he agrees.
Okay.
Hi, Franz.
Hi.
Maybe you need to turn on your camera.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so you have many comments and questions. Feel free.
One comment was on what Walter said, that the question of abortion is linked for Christians with the question of human being as an image of God. Really, some Christians link this concept, but I would prefer, and I think many Christians prefer, to not link it with the word of the Bible that the human being is image of God, but it's more the question when a human being starts to be human being. This would facilitate our discussion about abortion, I think, because the other one is dangerous because we destroy a strong wall against war, against slavery, against many other difficulties, crimes against the human being. So it's better to stress, I think, that human being is image of God, and not to link it with the question of abortion.
Thank you, Franz. Do you want to comment? I'm asking all the panelists. No?
Well, since I was addressed, I can accept Franz's argument. And I think that what this little discussion here also demonstrates is that we are able to approach obviously difficult discussions in a sense of friendship and solidarity without threatening the broad consensus which exists amongst us. And maybe even one ground on which we can also agree in the difficult question of abortion is that we want a society in which giving birth to a child and in which raising a child does not pose the social problems which it currently poses to women, so that we create an women-friendly and children-friendly environment. I think that is the question on which we can agree and which brings us forward. Also, and while accepting that there is a difference which will persist, we will see how things develop. But let me now put forward another aspect of being practical. Maybe you participated in the webinar last week of dialogue.
Yes.
And in this, Michael Levy raised one very important question. And another question which I would like to raise concerns the pandemic. I believe there are two, I would say, political demands on which we could agree, in which we could try to build consensus in our communities. One is in confronting the pandemic and the necessity of providing people with a vaccine. We should demand that all the vaccines which are now in research and in production should become common goods of humanity.
Yes.
Meaning assuring that they are available to all countries, to all layers of societies, and to all individuals by putting the patents in the public domain and allowing all countries under the condition that they are supervised internationally to produce generica on them. I believe it's a hugely important issue, and at the same time, it touches upon the capitalist logic and the logic of creating maximum profits out of the production of the vaccines. And the second moment I would like to stress concerns that what Michael Levy said. Shouldn't we start campaigning in solidarity with the indigenous communities in Brazil defending the Amazonian rainforest? As Michael rightly says, it is, so to say, paradoxical that these communities, which are very much unknown in the north and the west of the globe, are actually now in the forefront of defending the possibility to coping with the climate crisis and being confronted with a neo-fascist regime. They are defending our possibilities to survive in this critical moment of societies. And maybe we will find additional topics of convergence or of possibilities of common actions. But I feel, so to say, the moment in which we now should try to become more practical and, as Connie referred to me, more structural as creating an output of the consensus and agreements which we have already reached amongst us. And by the way, it would also be a good thing for the European Left Party to take up these two topics. It's not only something which concerns Dialog and our communities, it is something which concerns the left in its entirety and which concerns all communities of well-meaning people.
Thank you, Walter. Yes, this point was what I was thinking to ask you now to do. Think a bit and stress out the importance of proceeding in practical steps, not leaving the project, so to say, to look like more an academic bubble that people would just meet once per while, they talk, just for the sake of the dialogue, but that it is possible to start working on how we can make more concrete practical steps, how this dialogue can be a real thing, a material thing. So, of course, I know that it is very difficult to present a complete practical project, it is very difficult. And it is also a matter of collective work. More minds produce better work. But whatever you have already in your mind, how you now imagine these discussions to be materialized, what kind of steps can actually in real life, in everyday life, bring these two sides together?
Thank you, Angelina. I'm Luisa Cello.
Hi, Luisa.
Hello. I'd like to say two things. First is that this very organizational thing is that this, it was for me pity to know very late about this webinar, which would have been, could have been spread out more. I'm sorry about that because I see we're not that many here and it was a very important issue to talk about. And I don't know what it was upon, but anyhow, you know how to take care of that. The second one, because these webinars are real precious, they're real good things. The second thing is to this actual proposal of Levy, taken over now by Walter, is that we have a friend in Latin America, in Argentina. She lives close to the campesinos, and she works at the CHELAM, which is the conference of the bishops in South America. And she is a university professor, and they already had very interesting experiences with the campesinos and taking over land from the landlords and so on. And an idea could be to build a small group within our two parts and get in contact with her so that we can see, maybe take Michel Levy also in this group and see what could be done, or at least to listen to her and start to see what could be possible for the left, but also for a common action. I mean, now it's very far away. It seems that we take care of another continent, but it's as you said,
our world.
It's our world, and we have to start from somewhere. And because of the vaccine,
there is Catherine Belzung. She was also part of our group in the first years. Maybe we can join her to see how to help, what to do, or invite her to present her project in our group or in the left party.
Thank you, Franz. Thank you, Luisa. Connie?
It is nice that we are looking for concrete alliances for the both concrete project. And I would also looking for, I have in the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, Angelina described my background is from the Rosa Luxemburg Foundation, and I coordinate a working group for religious Christian-Marxist dialogue, and we have include our group some people, they have a lot of contact also to Latin America. And I would ask also my people from the Protestant Church, is it also possible for them to build a real economic, ecumenic broad alliances to these questions? And we have also in our Transform Web network, for example, 3 institutions from Spain and 1 institution from Portugal. And all these institutions have also a lot of contact to our Latin American comrades. And that means we have to build a real working group in which way we can push forward both initiatives. The initiative for the vaccine, we should combine with the European Left Party and looking for some initiative from Christian side in which way we could support and strong connected also with the European Union. That means with the different political groups in the European Union, especially, of course, the radical left. But also we have to looking for, could we find a common ground also with the Greens and also with the Social Democrats. And we have to looking for more concretely, is it possible to build such kind of different alliances between us? But I'm sure we can go forward, going forwards to this different both steps. And you will be one of the coordinator, Luisa, yes?
Luisa, your microphone.
Yes. Well, we can really get in touch with Susanna Nguyen and ask her at least to see each other on Zoom and start to talk about this. Maybe Angelina, you could be the coordinator for building the group. Then we can put this. Because I think we have to talk to different people. Susanna could be one who is in South America, and you talk about the ones in the three groups in Spain, or
Spain,
yes,
Portugal.
Spain, Portugal. Maybe we think a little bit more how it could take shape, but we keep in touch, Angelina. And so that we can find a roadmap and a way to get together.
A question, could we have the registration of this webinar so we can send it to some of these persons we mentioned?
Yes, I will tell you. I will send an email. An email will be sent automatically to all the people that have registered. But within this email, I need to ask their permission to use their email address. So I will do it. And if we have the permission, yes, we can use these email addresses.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Wonderful.
Okay, does anybody else wants to react on anything or says a comment, a final comment maybe? We have 10 minutes to close. We still have time. Don't be so modest. There is a question. I'm sorry, I didn't see the question. Okay, there is a question. There are so many field cooperation initiatives. For example, in my country, France, we have and had worker priests working alongside with communist municipalities, socially engaged Catholic youth movements, which were not segregated in the radical left spectrum, were not when at least the woman that posted was an activist, cooperation between NGOs, Christian and radical left Marxists, initiatives about the torture, migrants, cooperation is just natural. I would love to have presentations about such daily experiences. Maybe you had them in the past in this dialogue initiative. Yeah, that's an interesting point.
Yes, can I say one word about this?
Of course, you can say as many as you want. We have 10 minutes, speak.
Great, I won't speak for 10 minutes. No, anyway, this is interesting because it's something that was coming through my mind when I was listening to you speaking. I very much like the idea of Luisa of keeping in touch with someone in Latin America, also because I think that if we want to get practical, we really need to get in touch with people who are on the ground for both sides, because it's true that until now this dialogue have been conducted really on on an ideal and academic level. So if we want to do something practical, we also need to talk to those who are already on the ground. So yes, the experience that was on the question, it's very interesting on this. And it made me think, for example, which is just an example, actually was not part of this project or anything, of the experience of the NGO Mediterranea, which I have close friends in, which is great an example of this, because that was originally coming from the area of social centers, but actually right now have many people from the Catholic Church working for them or raising money for them around the migrant question. So maybe it's really, it would be really a good thing to keep in touch with this kind of people.
Thank you, Thank you, Federico. So, okay, we do have a practical proposal that is good. I believe we had a fruitful debate, and also we ended up with something more material. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. I want to thank the speakers who accepted actually the invitation, and also the participants. We really need to start working on more concrete proposals and starting engaging more people on that, also young people. We need to promote more this dialogue. I know for at least, well, from my side, I know for the leftists, it's hard to swallow such kind of initiatives. It needs, it is a matter of debate, it needs persuasion to have more people be engaged in a permanent basis on such initiatives. Thank you, Walter. Thank you, Connie. Thank you, Raul. Thank you, Federico. Yes, we want also to thank the interpreters, because we had also French interpretation, and the organizers of the European Forum, the people from the Party of the European Left. We have many materials of all the various initiatives of the Dialogue Project in Transform's website. My colleague Barbara Steiner had been posting information on the chat box, so you have all of them. Thank you so much. Have a nice evening. Have a good weekend. Take care and be safe.
Thank you very much,
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Angelina.
Thank you, Angelina.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Stay healthy.
Stay healthy.
Bye.